and welcome to Rotted Reviews. And today I want to talk about what is perhaps the most influential horror movie of my life. When I was in my late teens, I watched Evil Dead 2, and that really spurned my absolute devotion to horror films. But prior to that, I did enjoy them on a bit of a different scale, and that all started with the 1963 movie, The Haunting.
An evil old house, the kind some people call haunted, is like an undiscovered country waiting to be explored.
Based on the Shirley Jackson novel of The Haunting of Hill House, this is the movie that was directed by Robert Wise and stars Claire Bloom, Richard Johnson, Russ Tamblyn, and the iconic Julie Harris as Eleanor. This was a movie that I saw when I was a kid, and there were a few movies that I saw definitely before I should have, but I think this is the first one that I saw when I was a kid that was a horror movie that was acceptable in terms of the content maturity level. But that's not to say that this movie didn't give me nightmares, because it absolutely did. If you are a fan of horror movies but you don't like classic cinema, first of all, I beg you to try to pop your filter bubble and expand your horizons a little bit. But if you have and it's just simply not for you, then this is probably a movie to pass on, because if you're not a big fan of classic movies, I'm going to say that this is not the most accessible one. Although it has many chills, it doesn't have a whole lot of thrills. It is in black and white, it is slow paced, and a lot doesn't happen on screen. That's not to say a whole lot doesn't happen, but I'll get into that in just a little bit. So obviously following the plot line of Richard Johnson playing Dr. John Markway, who's trying to prove life after death exists, and he goes to one of the most famous haunted houses possible, Hill House. And to really kind of give it a little goose and try to trigger something that he could measure, he decides to go ahead and take some folks that have had a history with the supernatural or psychic phenomenon, and after a long list of candidates, many of whom dropped off themselves when they found out where they were going, he was left with the duo of Eleanor and Theo. And also joining them is the young man of Luke, who is the relative of the current owner of the house, who stands to inherit it down the line. And the entirety of the movie takes place within just a couple of days as this group investigates the phenomenon of the supernatural and the haunting of Hill House. Like I said, if you're not a big fan of classic cinema and you don't really kind of like the slow-paced, more mild approach to things that movies from, I would say, like the 1970s back have to offer, then what I would recommend is actually checking out the 1973 movie, The Legend of Hell House, starring Roddy McDowall, because that one has a lot of the same kind of beats and inspirations, despite actually being from different source material, The Legend of Hell House being written by Richard Matheson, but it does offer a bit more of a wild roller coaster thrill ride extravaganza than the 1963 The Haunting. I've been trying to kind of figure out what to say about this movie, aside from just how much it meant to me personally in my cinematic growth and my journey through adolescence and into adulthood. And the best I can really come up with, aside from just lavishing praise on this film, the concept of jazz music. I enjoy listening to jazz music. It's good to have in the background. I'm the furthest thing in the world from a scholar of it, and as such, there's one particular saying about jazz music that I've had difficulty as interpreting as anything other than just pretentious. And that is that with jazz music, it's just as much about the notes not being played as it is the notes being played. I have never really quite fully understood that, but the closest I've ever come to actually wrapping my head around and truly understanding in my heart that phrase of it's about the notes not being played is when I think of the 1963 movie, The Haunting. Because it very much is about everything that isn't shown. So much of this movie is left up to the imagination because a lot of it just happens off screen. You hear pounding happening against the walls, but it doesn't actually show anything. As a film that captures the concept of a house that was just born bad, without actually showing a whole lot, but still managing to come across through exposition and through holding back, only showing or only hearing just enough to let the audience's imagination run away with them to truly instill that fear. The primal concept of a house being a hearth and home and a warm place and a safe place, and turning that on its head, is one of the things that I love about the subgenre of haunted house movies within horror. I do love a good slasher movie, I do love a good home invasion movie, but for me, haunted house movies are the absolute tippy top of the heap. And that all started with the iconic 1963 movie of The Haunting. I kind of wanted to take today of all days to take the opportunity and discuss and review, I think, the one horror movie that really influenced me above all others. So if you do love classic cinema, but this one has escaped your gaze, by all means, make it a priority. Clear your schedule, get the movie, and watch the 1963 movie of The Haunting. And if you're kind of on the fence about classic horror, or if you've been wanting to dip your toes in more, I can't think of a better example for really trying it out and seeing if classic black and white, more mild horror than shock value roller coaster rides is for you than this film. I think I mean it now more than any other time I've said this before. I cannot recommend this film enough. So with that on the table, I just want to thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you soon. And remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.